Looking to have your groceries delivered? Try Instacart. By following the link in the show notes, you can shop multiple stores, get the products you love from local stores, and get your delivery in as fast as 1 hour. Plus, Instacart highlights deals to save you money. And for our listeners, free delivery on your first order over $35. Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from ItalianGenealogy.blog, and I'm here today with a very special guest, Suzanne Russo Adams from FamilySearch.org. So welcome, Suzanne. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited.
Yes, me too. Me too. I use Family Search, but I'm embarrassed to say probably not to its fullest extent. So hopefully you'll give me some pointers and anybody listening some pointers and where to find more information rather than just clicking on the tab. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you a little bit about your family, your Russo family, which I know is, I believe, the number one family name in Italy, if not very close to it.
It's pretty close. I mean, I think Rossi is probably a little more popular, but Russo is very common name in Italy. Yeah. So my Russos, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I have Russos. Could we be related?" And the reality is, unless your Russos are from Sicily and specifically from the Palermo area, my Russos, I've been able to trace them from Trapeto Balestrate area back into Terracini, Favarota, and so they're right in that area, right in Palermo. So all of my ancestors, my grandmother's side and my grandfather's the Russo, and my grandmother's side's Gambino. They all come from the province of Palermo in Sicily.
Right. And I know for people who have those common Italian names, I mean, there's so many names in Italy, but for those that have those very common Italian names, it's very, very tough to find unless you know the town that they come from.
It is a bit more tough, but one trick that I like to use is I often use the surname websites like gens.info or Cognomics or Inditalio, and any one of those sites, you can type in a surname and it will show you the propensity of where that surname is in Italy, and it'll kind of map it out. And if you pair a more common name with an uncommon name, you can actually get some pretty good results. And I use that almost all the time to sort of help, or as one help to figure out where people are coming from in Italy.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I actually did a blog post about that one time, and I posted a couple of those sites that really you can find great. The towns. Yeah, mm-hmm. Really makes it. I won't say makes it easier, but at least you could get in the vicinity.
Yeah.
So, in your personal family research, what did you find when you were researching your family that either stuck out or something that you didn't know that was kind of amazing?
Well, I'll tell you, we're farmers and fishermen, so nothing too wild and crazy. But I actually grew up in California. I grew up around my grandparents who spoke Sicilian, and growing up, I loved being around my family. I loved hearing the stories. My family came from Sicily to St. Louis, Missouri, and then ended up in the San Pedro, California area, where there's a huge group of people from Trapeto. There's a Trapeto club and all those sorts of things. And so I grew up in the LA area around just a ton of family. And I loved hearing the stories of, my grandparents, great grandparents, and my grandma talking about how when she went to school, she didn't know English, and she would bring her tomato sandwich and the kids would have peanut butter and she'd trade them. And it was, just interesting and fun. But I truthfully didn't get really into tracing my family history until I went to college. I went to Brigham Young University and just took an intro class to doing family history work, and just fell in love with it and decided, this is amazing. And there ended up being a major at BYU for family history and genealogy. And at the time there was George Rice Camp. I don't know if his name will sound familiar to any of your listeners, but he does a lot of work in Spain and Latin America. And so it made a lot of sense for him to branch out to France, Portugal, and Italy. And so there is a degree at BYU, and my specialty was Southern Europe, specifically Italy. And so I just dug really deep into researching my family, was able to have been able to go to Italy several times and kind of just explore what their life would have been like. And it's just been fascinating to me to see, because I actually have an uncle who came from Trapeto, so our ties to that town are really close. He came in the 1960s, and he was a fisherman as well. He was a fisherman in California, and so those things kind of just came through. I don't know if you want to hear any witchcraft or wizardry story, because you have a lot of that in Sicilian culture as well. But if you want to hear a story, a fun story that I found out about my family, I've got one of those.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's
So
great. This will be the first witchcraft story. So,
okay, well, I did my master's in history at BYU, and I looked kind of at magic and mysticism in the culture a little bit, more to do with the Catholic Church and popular Catholicism and different things like that. But so I've studied a little bit about the magic and mysticism in Italy, and you'll actually, there's a really good micro history by Carlo Ginzburg called The Cheese and the Worms, and that book will kind of give people a sense of the type of magic and mysticism that I'm talking about. And that wasn't actually in Sicily, that I think was in more in northern Italy, but that's a great read too. So here's my magic and mysticism story. That my great grandfather came to America, and this was about 1904, and there was a witch in the town that really wanted him to marry her daughter. And he had all these headaches and different things like that. But as soon as he went to America, the headaches stopped. But then when he went back to go and marry my great grandmother, the headaches started coming and things like that. And so they went out on their fishing boat, and a huge sea monster came up and tried to attack the boat. And so my great grandfather and his friends, or I guess, or family, chopped the head off of the sea monster. And the next day they found the witch in her home with her head between her legs, dead. So
wow.
take that for what it's worth. But those are kind of the little tidbits that I grew up with. Some, they believed in a lot of different things like that, which I found to be kind of fun and fascinating.
That's funny. So back to BYU for a second. So
Yeah.
that's pretty neat that they have those courses like that. And I actually did an interview now about a month ago with a high school teacher in Massachusetts, and he has the liberty of having a genealogy class for his students. I don't remember if they're juniors or seniors, which is pretty cool. And he's going to have them use some of the podcasts and some of my notes. And I suggested him, I said, what might be fun if the parents are okay with it? They could be on the call if they want.
Yeah.
That we make, we do a 5-minute interview with them about their research. So he's trying to get everybody started earlier. And
so great.
I found that to be so exciting. I wish I had something like that when I was growing up, because I always loved history.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think there's something inbred in all of us that make us want to find the family.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I think it's been exciting to see more and more kids getting involved and younger people getting involved in family history. Over the last 20 plus years, I was fairly young when I started, and so I'd go to conferences and people would ask me, is your mother or grandmother here? And no, it's me. But it's exciting, because I think tracing your history and your family history especially is very grounding for children. It's there's been a lot of studies, and you'll see it in the New York Times and all over the place, that it helps children with resiliency, and it's kind of an amazing thing that so many people are really trying to research their families and really make that connection. I think it's important.
So for Paul's class, because I'm going to send this to Paul,
Yeah.
For his class, what would you suggest the number one thing or the number one and two things that a student who wants to start researching their family do?
Okay, so I mean, the typical answer is you start with yourself and you work your way back. And I would say one of the very first things is to start interviewing those around you, interview parents and grandparents, aunts, uncles, and everybody has a different story. And so you'll get different perspectives about the family. But that's probably one of the best ways to start, is to just start gathering what I like to call living memory, what people remember and know. From their history, and then the records are there, much more so than they were 20 plus years ago when I first started. I mean, I remember using the U.S. federal census on microfilm and doing the sound X and things like that, and it's just amazing to see what's available in the way of records. So I would say capture that living memory before it's gone. um, interview family members. That's probably the first place I'd start, and then you can go and start researching the records.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I recently learned, probably about a year and a half ago, my youngest cousin from my mom's oldest brother, who stayed behind in Italy when my grandparents came and did not come to America till 1950, almost
Mm-hmm.
uh, 35 years after his mother and father came. My cousin did an interview with his dad in Barres, and I learned of this, and I said, Joey, you have to translate this for the family. And he said, I
Mm-hmm.
tried once, I couldn't get through it. He says, I was just so all broken up. And I begged him. I said, you have to do this. I said, this is the family history.
Yeah.
We're going to lose this if you don't do it. So
Right.
he had to go find a reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Yep.
And he finally did. He sat down with his sister, and it was just such a great insight into uh, Torito Bari from probably 1915 through 1950.
Yeah. 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 And that once someone is gone, that's gone. I treasure those tape recordings that are now digital of my grandparents, and I have my grandfather telling about the day that I was born, and he's telling it in Sicilian, and it's just I absolutely love it. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, it is great. So now you actually lived in Italy for a while as a student, yes?
Yeah, I did an internship there. So I lived mainly in the city of Naples, which if anyone's been there, is a little bit of a fun city. So yeah, that was my experience. I spent a couple months working at the Archivio di Stato di Napoli, and had a wonderful experience, and then had the opportunity to travel around to different archives and go, of course, to Sicily and do some of my own research. Stayed with family there, but you got to be careful when you stay with family, because they want to feed you and monopolize your time, but that's totally okay. But yeah, so it was a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we were supposed to be there in April, and
Oh,
we had a whole tour
yeah.
set up. I mean, we're hoping that we were going to try to shoot for October, but now we're putting it off till next May. But
Yeah.
I was going to meet cousins that I never knew existed,
Wow.
third and fourth cousins from my grandmother's family, and
Awesome.
my dad's from Naples, mom's from Bari,
Mm,
uh, but the Naples side is extremely well connected. And from what one of my cousins said that went there just before the virus, she said the family names are every place, and there's chapels with their names, and
yeah.
the
That's
crest and
great.
all of that kind of stuff. So it was so exciting. But the first time we went to Naples, I was really just at the train station to pick up a car to drive to Sorrento, and I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea that my grandmother's mom's family practically owned Via Carbonara, because when
Wow.
I look at the records,
Yeah.
who was born at number 23 and who died at number 28 and who was married
Yeah.
at number
Yeah.
30. So, I just dying to see all of that and meet these cousins that I never knew existed and they never knew that I existed.
Mm,
But
that's great.
we'll get there,
Yeah,
hopefully.
you will. You will. You'll get there.
So let's get into Family Search. And as I said, I have a Family Search account. I use it. I
Mm-hmm.
have my
Great.
family out there. I One of the things I like about it is you can really build on the tree if you go far out like I do.
Hmm.
But I'm probably using maybe 10 or 15% of the capabilities. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about when and how Family Search got started and how
Sure.
people could best use it.
Yeah, so Family Search has been around for a long, long time. So it started out as the Genealogical Society of Utah in 1894, and it is part of and sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so affiliated with that are over 5,000 family history centers, the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, and things like that. And so there are, I don't think a lot of people know this, it's absolutely free. So there is no payment. You said you have an account. It's a free account, and it's consistently and constantly free. But we have over 8 billion historical records, more than 3 billion images published out there. If your listeners are familiar, have heard of the Granite Mountain Vault. Family Search originally started microfilming. It started small with sort of a library where people could write in and request, to have people help them with their research and things like that. But it grew in the late 1930s. There was, on the eve of World War II, they saw a great need to start preserving records, especially in Europe. And so microfilming began in 1930s. And in Italy specifically, the first project that Family Search did was in 1948 in the Torre Pellice area up in northern Italy. And so it's been around for a long time. First digital images, I think, started to go online around 1999. I want to maybe a little bit later than that, but it's been online. There's a massive tree, and the tree. A lot of people don't understand this. The tree is a completely open tree, so it's not like going to ancestry.com where you can have a private tree or a public tree. The tree on Family Search is a completely open tree, which lends itself to a lot of collaboration. And so you can start inputting your names in there, add resources and things like that, and the tree just sort of grows and gets bigger. And so you may find that you can connect with someone who's already researched quite a bit in your town and sort of connect to the lines that they've researched.
We'll be right back.
Experience Italy like never before, traveling with a scheduled group or create your own bespoke tour with friends with FamilySearch.com. Pack your bags and follow Phil. That's www.FamilySearch.co. Yeah, and that's one of the things I think as I was going through my tree that I found that other people had already put those names in. And to your point, it does build out there very quickly. Once you find
Mm-hmm.
those links, it just flows. And I think it was especially good for me because of my grandmother's noble family. But I would expect for those who are researching, U.S. families going back several hundred years, it must have a ton of information there.
Right. And I mean, and because a lot of people are going in there, it hopefully acts more like a Wikipedia kind of thing where you have hopefully more people who are adding good information than are changing things. But yeah, you can find just a significant amount. And because Family Search is global, we've got records, family history records from over 100 different countries. So not just Italy, but all over the world, over 100 different countries. We're working in Europe and Latin America and Africa, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. We are capturing records right now. We've got over 300 digital cameras that are capturing all over the world as we speak. A little bit slower now because of COVID, but we still do have some cameras that are capturing, and those images just flow in. I don't know if you're aware, but so there's three different ways that you can access the actual records on Family Search. One is go to FamilySearch.org, and under the search tab, there's a records section, and the records section is where we have a lot of the records that we've indexed. And then there's also the Family History Library catalog. So if you go under catalog, you're able to search what we have in not only the Family History Library itself in terms of books and film and fish and things like that, but also all the digital images that have been cataloged. And then we have a new section called images, and that image section is literally everything that's coming hot off the press that hasn't even been cataloged yet. So it's coming straight from our cameras, and in many instances, we're able to offload those images within 24 hours. So as you go to that images section, you'll just see it ticking away, just throwing images up there for users to access.
Oh yeah, and I was bouncing around this morning, and I actually just kind of discovered that on my own just before, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Wow, this is pretty neat."
Yeah, and so I mentioned the FamilySearch started microfilming back in the 1930s, and so in the 1990s, FamilySearch started to digitize the film, and so we're very close to actually finishing digitizing all of the microfilm that we have. And for Italy, we've actually digitized every single microfilm that we have. We've digitized it, and of course, we're capturing new images in Italy as we speak. And so you've got those films meeting the new digital world, and all of that is coming up on FamilySearch. I should also mention that we have a book section, and in that book section there are over 400,000 books and that have been digitized, and about 200,000 of them are sort of public domain, so anyone can access them. Some of them have to be accessed at a family history center or a library, or at the Family History Library itself. But that's a great resource as well. And there are books from all over, a lot of them, from the Family History Library itself, but also we have partners like Allen County Public Library or BYU or other libraries, mainly in the US right now, that we've been able to digitize books with. So just amazing. And also should mention the research wiki and learning class. There's classes on there besides a wiki. Right now, because the Family History Library is closed, you can go on there and you can do online consultations. So there's just a lot of opportunity and a lot of different things that you can do at FamilySearch.org.
Oh, that's cool, and that's another great point for Paul's high schoolers to go in
Yeah,
and look at some of that.
absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be
Absolutely.
fantastic for them.
Mhm.
So one of the things that people ask me all the time with Italy, and I know there's a wealth of information comes from the Antonati, but people
Mhm.
always ask about trying to find church records. So
Right.
does FamilySearch digitize any of that, or are there plans to do that?
Yeah, so FamilySearch in the past has digitized a little bit of Catholic church records. It's kind of spotty, and I'll mention a site, ItalianParishRecords.org. They've started to kind of gather and put some links up to what FamilySearch has. But you can go to the catalog on FamilySearch.org and type in, the name of your town and see what is available, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll find church records. We're not currently doing any church record acquisition. We have been for the last 10 years just so focused on civil registration, and so I don't know if your listeners are aware of how that project has worked or is working, but in 2011. And that's right when I joined FamilySearch. I came from Ancestry.com. I worked for Ancestry for 12 years and was enticed over in 2011 to FamilySearch to help work with Latin America and with the Italian project. And so the agreement with the State Archives of Italy was signed by FamilySearch in 2011. And so that's when we started to digitize records throughout the state archives. Now, we also have been going to the courthouses as well. And so there's a lot more that you'll see on FamilySearch.org to research your ancestors than you will on Antonati, because what happens is FamilySearch will capture the images from the state archives in Italy, process them, and then give them back to the Italian government to put up on Antenati. And but besides that, there's the church records and all the courthouse records that aren't part of that agreement that are on FamilySearch.org. So there are millions and millions more records on FamilySearch.org for Italian ancestry than you'll see on Antenati.
We'll be right back.
Lafayette, we are here. The French history podcast for the American public by a Frenchman. Learn all about France's fascinating history, its great characters like Charlemagne, Joan of Arc, Louis XIV, or Napoleon, but also the great events that marked France, Europe, and sometimes the whole world. Lafayette, we're here. Available wherever you get your podcast or on LafayettePodcast.com. À bientôt.
Oh, well, that's great. Yeah. And I've found some things. In fact, I have a branch not too far from me in Long Branch, New Jersey, where I went in there and looked at the microfilm and actually found some stuff that I didn't find online. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah.
So when I look at my tree, and I'm looking at it now, there's a 4-letter or 4-digit alphanumeric code next to everybody's name. So what is that, and how would people use that to find their family?
So that is a kind of a little code that's a unique identifier to each person. And so if you go to under family tree on FamilySearch.org and click on find, you're able to search for somebody by their first and last name and where they were born, and put in some about dates and things like that. But you can also click on find by ID, and that ID number, if you've got that number, or it's alphanumerical, but if you have that ID number, you're able to type that in and then directly go to that person in a tree. And so each person has that individual ID number that they're sort of just assigned when they're added to the tree.
Okay, so just that's another way of doing lookups.
Yeah.
And so I know you could build a lot on FamilySearch. I know you could put memories out there, and
Yeah.
you could build a whole portfolio of your family. So maybe you could get into a little bit about how people,
Sure.
as
yeah.
opposed to other sites that you have to maybe buy or do a monthly fee. How do you use FamilySearch to build out your family and put your memories in there and all of that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So you can, like I said, you can type in the name and all of their identifying information, but beyond that, you're able to attach records from FamilySearch, or even, a link to records that you find on other places. You're able to upload stories and photos and memories, and you can do that, JPEG, I think TIFF is accepted. You can add audio files, and so I even have little audio clips of my kids in there, funny things they've said, or I've added different audio files for different family members. But you can add whatever relates to your family members. I have funeral cards and handwritten recipe cards, even from my grandmother, my nana. I've uploaded those so that they can be shared with family members. And so because this is wide open and access and free, anybody can come and look at those, and I can send a link to a family member to come and look at that, or give them that individual ID number and they can come look that up. But there's just so many different possibilities for adding information. Now, anyone who's living is obviously going to be private in the tree, so anything that relates to them, no one will be able to access or see. But anybody that's deceased in the tree, you can find just so many amazing things, pictures and stories and audio, all of that kind of thing. So it's kind of pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, it is, and I think that's one of the issues that people don't realize is that it is totally free. People are hesitant sometimes on my blog or my Facebook page. I'll say, "Well, did you try Family Search?" And they say, "Well, I don't want to pay for anything." And I say, "Well, it's free. Don't
Hmm.
worry about it. You
Yeah,
could build your
right.
tree. You could find records. And there's a lot of information out there that could either help you get started or keep you going." So, I built my tree mostly by hand.
Hmm.
I did again once I started finding things like you just kind of click and it adds it much easier than any other site that I've ever used. But
Right.
can you download information in there, upload information into there
Oh,
from a
that
different
is
tree?
an excellent question. So, it used to be in the olden days that you could, of Ancestral File, and I don't know how many of your users are aware of that, but Ancestral File you could upload and download GEDCOMs. But this tree is sort of a living, breathing tree, and there isn't a great way to upload or download. If you go to the genealogy section under search, you can still upload trees to FamilySearch, but they're not connected to the main tree that you'll see out there that everybody's sort of working on and collaborating on. And so honestly, no, there's not a really great way to do that. There's a few. Now, if you have like a tree on Ancestry and you're like, well, how do I get things over to FamilySearch or sync with the count? There's a really good crosswalk. Roots Magic is a very good offline software to use that acts sort of as a really good crosswalk between Ancestry and FamilySearch. And so you can do. I use that when I want to transfer things that I put on Ancestry over to FamilySearch or vice versa. So there are a few ways to do that, but downloading things, not downloading the actual tree data, no, not really a great way to do it. I mean, you can of course go out there and download or access or copy memories or photos or stories or things like that, but actually, a 4 generation or something like that, no, you can't.
And I would add to people that don't let that deter you because
Right. Yeah.
there is a lot of information out there, and like I said, I was
Hmm.
able to build out my tree, and actually putting the information in there is not really that difficult. It's actually
No,
pretty easy.
no, yeah, it's really quite easy. Yeah.
Yeah, and attaching things and
Hmm.
things like that. It is pretty simple. Um, well, and again, it is a great tool. It's free, and I would encourage everybody that if you haven't tried it, at least go out there and give it a shot. So, one other thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is that I know you've written at least one book on Italian genealogy, and how would that help, or what other articles have you written that would point people in the right direction if they're just starting out, or even halfway through doing their Italian research?
Yeah, so I wrote a book. It came out probably a good 10 years or so ago, and it was done by through ancestry.com. When I worked there, they had the publishing company, and some of your listeners may remember they did a magazine, Ancestry magazine, and things like that. But it was published through Ancestry, and now was picked up by Turner Publishing. But you can find that on Amazon. It's called Finding Your Italian Ancestors: A Beginner's Guide, and there's a lot of really great things in there. Some word lists and different things like that are helpful, and walking you through how to read a civil record or how to read a church record, or just some history and some beginner tips about getting started doing Italian family history and some of the things that I've learned over the years. So yeah, it's a really great book. There's a few other ones out there. An older one is maybe Trafford Cole's book. Melanie Holtz has come out with one that's a little bit more recent, but I feel like you put anything in print, it becomes a little outdated. So I can direct people. FamilySearch Wiki is being updated, and then they're all the FamilySearch blog is a really great resource. I've written a few articles on there on tips and tricks on how to get started with Italian researches too. So the blog is a good place to go as well.
Yeah, and actually, I did interview Melanie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's a good friend.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah,
yeah,
she was excellent. We had a lot of fun. I have fun on
yeah.
all of these things because
Yeah.
I'm like one of the psychos that just are so into it.
Oh, me too. Yeah, Melanie and I have done a couple of week-long Italian courses at GRIP at the Genealogical Research Institute of Pittsburgh. We did a beginner to intermediate course where we, taught for a week, and then a year or two ago we did an advanced course. So I'm kind of hoping to put together another one of those and help people, because that was kind of the first time that somebody's done an entire week-long course on doing Italian family history and research. So
Oh,
it's
that's
kind of
neat.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I have an interview next month with Dr. Scelsa from the Italian American Museum in New York
Oh,
City,
great. Yeah.
and that'll be fun. They're building a whole new building. It kind of slowed down a little bit because of the virus, but they're up and going again. And
That's
uh,
exciting.
we'll put that information out there once that's done. But I wanted to go, and everything got locked down. But I don't know if
Yeah.
you're aware, but they have a tenement building in New York City that's 4 floors, and each floor is dedicated to a different immigrant population by year. So it's
Oh,
it's
wow.
it's decorated for when the Italian wave came over, and the Jewish
Mm-hmm.
wave, and the Russian, and I think Irish. I think those are the 4, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's
Uh,
that's interesting.
and
That's great.
and we really were dying to go to that, and then everything got shut down. So hopefully we'll
Yeah.
get to go soon.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Now, is that near Little Italy?
yeah, it's right in Little Italy,
Okay.
actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, that's another one of my fun things that I like to do, visit all the little Italies that I can find.
Yeah, I started doing some some blog posts on it, and it is quite fascinating because coming from New York, we thought there were like one Little Italy. So,
Right.
and
Yeah, no, there's
it's
several
not.
little areas, right?
Yeah, no, I've been to San Francisco, so I know that one, and I've been to
Yeah.
Boston, so I know that one.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
one.
yeah, it's just restaurants. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, New York City, Little Italy isn't the one that when I grew up. It's just not the same anymore.
Yeah.
There's very few Italians there. Um, but I'll give you a funny story. It must have been 1980, 83, somewhere in the early to mid 80s, and the San Gennaro Festival was going on. And they always have the gold saint, and they march it down the street. Well, they had it in the window of just plain old storefront,
Mm-hmm.
um, just sitting there. And we stopped and we were looking at it. And I guess we were looking at it for a little bit longer than you were supposed to look at it. And 2 big burly guys came out and said, "Can we help you?" And we just said, "We're just looking." And he said, "You looked long enough." Okay.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Moving on now.
So just a little subtle hint about how long you're able to look at San Gennaro on
Yeah.
Mulberry Street or whatever street it is. But my wife's mom actually lived in Little Italy back in. She was born there in the 20s.
Oh
So
wow. Wow,
um,
amazing. So amazing.
yeah, and the funny story about that is my aunt's husband comes from the same town as Sicily as my wife's mom's family.
Mm-hmm.
Last name is Cusimano, and my wife has some Cusimano, and they did DNA tests. My wife did the DNA test, and I
Mm-hmm.
said you have to be related to them. There's no way they can't be not related, and nothing shows up. So they may be
Oh
so
my
far
goodness.
back. They must
Yeah.
be so far back, but
Yeah.
it's a small town in Sicily. How many people could
Right.
have
Where
lived there?
where in Sicily?
I'll probably say it wrong, but Sciacca and
Oh,
uh,
Shaka. Yeah.
Shaka, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um yeah, because I have Cusmanos too. But yeah, the DNA thing is kind of interesting too. And um you have to, I think people need to realize that DNA is one record, is a record type. So without, all of the paper records and things like that, we probably shouldn't just use DNA alone to figure out relationships, because especially in a small town in Sicily or in Italy, where they've kind of perhaps intermarried over the years. And so you can find, and I've seen this in my own DNA research on, on Ancestry, that there's some people who can be related to you in multiple ways. And so then the number of centimorgans that you see is going to be higher than what you would normally expect for that relationship type. And so that's something to be a little bit aware of in Italian research. But those intermarriages, closely related, create some really good church records, dispensations, and we could talk about that for a long time. But those dispensation records are pretty amazing.
Well, we'll have to come back and do another one and talk about that.
We could talk about church records.
But my I have I guess Linda's a fourth cousin, I believe. We never knew each other, and she contacted me through Ancestry and said, "I think we're researching the same person, Maria Piramalo." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Yeah." I said, "She was my grandfather's sister." And she said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm positive. There's no question about it. I know for a fact they lived in the same building in New York City. Piramalo was a very uncommon name. I'm 99.9% certain." So she did the Ancestry test, and right away she came back, "I got my results. You're not on it." I said, "Well, let me look at mine." And she was on mine.
Oh, interesting.
So that was weird. So I said, "Well, you're on mine." So she said, "Well, I'm going to call them." So she called them, and I don't know, they said they had some kind of mistake. And anyway, I show up on hers now. But then as we started talking, I said, "Well, who's your family and all of this?" And her grandmother was, her first name was Beatrice. And I said, "Well, where did she live?" And she said, "Flushing," right? And I said, "Well," and her father's name is Petix, Petix. So I said, "Well, that's my father." When I was maybe 5, 6, 10, whatever, my parents going to see over to Aunt Beatrice's and Petix. So as we were going through this whole thing, we found out that there was such a close relationship between the two families from the 20s through probably the early 60s.
Wow. Yeah.
That it just went right over my head. And then I said, I lived 5 blocks away from your grandmother's house in Flushing. When I got married the first time, I said, and I kind of remember driving past this house and my father saying, "That's where Aunt Beatrice lives." And I was 20 years old. I was like, "Oh, whatever. That's where Aunt Beatrice lives." Okay. But I moved into my first cousin's house. Her sister, my oldest cousin, was the maid of honor for Linda's aunt.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Linda's aunt worked at my grandfather's shop in the 50s. My grandfather had a bridal embroidery, made bridal crowns and things like that. So this whole history came together from just a message on Ancestry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so to get to the end, she came over with her cousin, her first cousin. He brought his mom's bridal crown and everything with him. And Linda had beads that her grandmother saved, beads probably close to 100 years old from my grandfather's shop.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
And gave my cousin Paul and my sister and I a little package with beads from my grandfather.
Oh, that's incredible. What a great story. Yeah,
so,
you never know who you're going to connect with, and it's just such a wonderful thing to be able to, I think, to connect with people and to to make those connections of people that lived in or around your ancestors. I think that's an important point to make, that there's a whole story with the whole neighborhood has a story together, not just your individual family, but everybody surrounding you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, for me, the most fascinating thing was to find that I actually still had, distant, but still had cousins in Italy from my grandmother's family, because nobody ever talked about it. I never had a clue. I knew from my grandfather's family that he he had a sister that was still there who was a nun in Naples until she
Yeah.
passed away. And so I kind of knew that, but I didn't know it. In fact, I didn't know anything about my grandmother's family, very, very little
Hmm.
at all. And, you know, when I found out and I asked my cousin who used to live with my grandmother, gave her my great grandmother's family name. And she said, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the name. And my other cousin told me, yeah, Nanny used to tell us that her cousin was the princess. And we thought she was just some crazy old lady. But it turns out that her cousin was the princess and the grandfather was the prince.
Amazing. That's
So,
so neat. Yeah, like I said, I've got farmers and fishermen, so
well, that's mom's
pretty,
side.
pretty cool.
Mom's side with farmers and seamstresses. And when I came across, I think, a forest range, I was like so excited. Oh, finally, somebody
Yeah,
in that family did
yeah,
something different. Um,
right.
well, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time,
Yeah, it's good to be here.
and we'll have to set up another one to talk about church records.
Sounds great.
All right, thanks
Yeah,
again.
thank you.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook in the Italian Genealogy group or at www.italiangenealogy.blog.